to In the News for April the 29th, 2022. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hello, Brett. How's it going?
It's going well. You can see I'm flying over the rooftops of City Hall in Philadelphia. I'm on the road again, Jeff, and it's very nice. But of course, I don't want to miss a week talking to you. And I'm glad that we're not missing this week, because one of your first stories here just really started chapping my hide, Jeff, when I was reading this. I guess we can file this under another public service announcement of another area maybe that you might want to check if this disturbs you a little bit. And I loved how they call this enhanced relevant advertising. Ooh, I don't like this, Jeff, but thanks for linking to this.
Talk about doublespeak. I mean, you just told all of us that you happen to be in Philadelphia right now, but you know, AT&T already knew that you were in Philadelphia, Brett, and I'm sure they were already serving you different ads as a result. This was a great story from the Washington Post that talks about how the most of the cell phone companies have these services. We're always talking about privacy, and like if you use Facebook and then you go from that website to a different website, are they sharing your information and stuff like that? But the person that knows exactly everything about you when you're using your cell phone service is your cell phone provider. I mean, they know what websites you visit because it goes through their servers. They know where you're located. They know who you are. They know who you call. I mean, they know so much information. And what I did not realize is that they monetize that information and they sell ads on it and share it with other folks. So the article in the Washington Post, warns us of all of this. That's the PSA. And then it tells you how to get out of it.
Yes. Thank you.
Let me talk about this. So AT&T, which we're talking about, they have one called that is relevant advertising, which everybody is opted into automatically, which means that they will sell to other people your browsing history and the videos that you've watched. And they claim that they anonymize it, so they don't literally say Brett Burney, but who knows what other information they say. I mean, they may say, a person who is in this town looks at these websites. I mean, goodness, if they say a person in New Orleans looks at the iPhone JD website a whole lot, advertisers pretty much know it's going to be me. So it's a little disturbing. And then there's also something called enhanced enhanced relevant advertising.
It sounds like they're doing us more of a favor.
Exactly. Enhanced relevant advertising means they also sell your location and your call history. I'm like, goodness gracious. So you're going to sell an advertiser everyone that I call, everywhere I've been, and what websites I look at. Give me a break. So the post explains how you can turn it off, but I will tell you, Brett, it is not easy. I followed the directions for AT&T.
I tried.
Didn't work for you. Yeah, I eventually got it, but I didn't actually precisely follow the Washington Post directions. I had to then go into my account and I used their directions as a guide, but then I had to go in separately. Oh my goodness, it was a pain.
It's like another site that opens. In other words, they don't make it easy to turn this off.
Yeah, they don't at all. And what I thought was interesting from the Post article is they say that, Verizon does the same thing. And they have this phrase for Verizon. I got to love this. Verizon, quote, makes efforts not to target you based on any adult sites you visit, health conditions, and sexual orientation. Well, gee, thanks, Verizon. I really appreciate that you make efforts.
They make an effort.
Away. As long as you make an effort, that's really all that matters. As long as you're making an effort. What is that? That's ridiculous. So now they do say that T-Mobile is not as bad as the other one. So that's
right.
A T-Mobile subscriber. That's one thing for you. But if you're a Verizon or an AT&T subscriber, and for those folks outside of the United States, whatever carrier that you use, you should definitely look. Most people, of course, have zero idea. And I will say one more thing. This enhanced relevant advertising, the Post article makes it seem like that's something you have to opt into. But when I finally got to the setting, I was opted into it. And I guarantee you, Brett, that I never voluntarily opted into that. So somehow I
wouldn't even know how to if you wanted to.
Yeah, maybe it was
so hard.
Some, paragraph that was buried in page 16 of some agreement I signed up for.
I'm sure it was.
Service. So I turned them off, and I don't need. And I will say this: we make fun of this. I know that there are a few people out there that say, "Oh, actually, well, maybe it's better." I mean, if I'm going to see ads anyway, I guess it's better to see relevant ads because that way you're going to show me something I may actually want to buy, and that's fine. I guess that's the other viewpoint. But we all know what's really going on is they're just monetizing you and giving your personal information. And we've had articles in the past that people that purchase this information from indirectly from companies like AT&T, they can really figure out who you are. And so if you're ever concerned, I mean, maybe none of you or I or most listeners are not important enough to be targeted, but certainly if you were a public figure of any way, the bad guys that are out there, if they wanted to target you for like a spear phishing campaign or something like that, it would cost them relatively little money to purchase this information. And so I feel like, it's a simple, it's much like keeping my front door of my house closed. I realize a bad guy can break through a front door, but I would just like to have the privacy of having the front door closed, so they have to actually push it before they can come in. And I just assume AT&T not give all this information out. So.
It seems like the constant game of whack-a-mole, Jeff. I think you've referenced this before. We talk about it on app tracking transparency. It's almost like I would have never even thought about this, although it makes complete sense. And I do sometimes try to be the devil's advocate and say, okay, what's the other side of this? AT&T and Verizon do have access to this information. And if it doesn't bother you, and in fact, I'll give you a quick example. I'm not sure if it's tied to this or not, but yesterday I was just going through my Twitter feed. And in my back of my mind, I had thought, well, I'd like to take my wife out to a nice dinner, while I'm here in Philadelphia, and because my family's with me. And so I'm going through my Twitter feed, and then, sometimes they have sponsored ads. Now, again, this may not be because of the AT&T, but there was a story that said, the most romantic restaurants in Philadelphia. Well, wouldn't you know, I fell for that, right? And I tapped on it, and it was great, actually. In fact, it had a couple of really good recommendations, but half of my brain simply was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Somebody, somewhere, somehow knows that I'm in Philadelphia. Twitter apparently has access to that information. They bubbled up that little sponsored ad for me. And I was able to take advantage of that. In other words, I'm trying to understand that there could be some good to this, but I guess what I don't like is the fact that I would have never even thought about this, never even would have understood where to find this. And I still haven't successfully been able to turn it off myself, because now I'm trying to go to the AT&T website, maybe because the post posted about it, it's down. It keeps saying that, oh, it looks like our site is not cooperating with us right now. And I'm like, oh, you son of a, and it's like, I'm trying to get out of this and do it, but I'm so glad that you linked to it. And maybe I think everybody understands sort of what we've probably beat this dead horse quite a bit, but it is yet another area that you can go and turn off and be more specific on your experience and what information you're going to be sharing from your personal standpoint as people go through this. Anyway, thanks for the link as well, Jeff, on giving that gifted link so that we can read through that. And relevant advertising. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me at all.
Now that they know you were looking for romance in Philadelphia, I'm sure it's just a matter of minutes before you'll be getting ads for hot singles in your area in Philadelphia. So look forward to that.
And I can't even turn it off yet. Okay, anyway, that's enough of that. So just in case you wanted to know, another a website that Apple just this past week launched, which I got to tell you, Jeff, you can explain a little bit more about this. I'm a little surprised about this, but some people are saying that it may not be as effective as it could be. So Apple launched a self-service iPhone repair website, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, and for now it's just iPhone.
Use at your own risk.
Yeah, for now it's just iPhone, but they're supposed to be expanding this in the future to other products as well. Here's the backstory on this. There is a movement in the United States called the Right to Repair movement. And one of the biggest, you often hear about it, not as much for smartphones, you hear about it of all things for tractors, because apparently John Deere tractors are incredibly popular among farmers, and many farmers would love to be able to repair them themselves when they break. But historically, John Deere made it difficult to get repair parts. So, for a farmer, you'd have to bring it all the way into a repair place as opposed to fixing it yourself. And so this movement of you own it, you should be able to repair it. And of course, in the United States, you technically have a right to repair anything you own. The problem is you just can't get the parts for it. And so Apple has been faced with threats of legislation to force it to do things like allow sell the repair parts. And I think to try to stem that effort, Apple's decided, well, let's just go ahead and make it available. So Apple contracted with this third party company. They've got the website now, and so you can go on if you want to replace a broken screen on an iPhone, or, a damage, you have that battery that's worn out, you want to replace it with a fresh new battery, or other sort of standard repairs, you can now purchase the parts from Apple to do it. Now, the thing is, it's not just the parts, because just having, for example, a brand new screen is not enough to replace the screen on an iPhone, because as you know, the screen, you can't just, it's on there. It's hard to get off.
Right.
So you also have to have these incredibly big machines that you put your iPhone in that take the screen off and put the new one on. And Apple will sell you those, but they're hundreds of dollars. If you just have a small repair to do, they'll rent it to you for like a weekend for like $49. So you can make your repair and send it back. But suffice it to say, and you can probably see where I'm going with this, the cost that you put into this is literally going to be more than you would pay to bring it to an Apple store and pay them to do it. Right. But having said that,
absolutely,
I could see reasons that people would still want to do it. First of all, if you're doing a whole bunch of them, if you're doing a bunch of, if your business is to repair iPhones, you have already purchased these parts from Apple in the past, because Apple would sell them to repair companies. The difference is that you or me or anyone else with a web browser can now purchase them. But if you were going to do a whole bunch of them, maybe you could justify the cost. Or, I think that I look at my son, he loves to sort of take things apart and see how they work.
A tinkerer.
So,
he likes to tinker.
He will always go through. So I can actually see, if someone says it's going to cost me an extra $100 to replace the battery, but as an advantage, I'm really curious about how things work, and I get to take it apart and put it together. And if I mess up, I'm going to void my warranty. But I can totally understand the reason for that. So I'm glad that Apple is doing this. And as you're showing on the screen, all the repair manuals are available.
Yeah,
so,
interesting.
Apple, because it's, you can now buy the parts, you can buy the special screwdrivers, because it's, it's different screws, and everything that you need, you can now buy. And I think that is a good thing, even though many people probably had the thought of, instead of paying Apple $300, I could do it myself for $100. No, that's not how it's going to work.
Yeah. Not worth it. And in fact, I think I heard somebody say, again, fair warning, right? If your phone is still under some kind of a warranty, within a year or so, and you start taking things apart, I don't know that may be the best way to go. And then frankly,
Apple says it will not void your warranty.
Okay, good.
That's a change they made. They say unless you break something. No, of course, if you break it, you voided your warranty. But if you don't break something, and then like 6 months later, you have to bring in your phone for something else, the simple fact that you took it apart does not void the warranty, which is an important thing.
I don't want to take the chance, Jeff. That's it.
Of course I would.
If I'm paying this much, maybe your son, but that's it. And it is good. And I love the fact that these repair manuals on. I think I read David Sparks mention, it's just really neat to see the inside guts, at least from an official formal repair manual. And again, these have been available, I'm sure, and you could find them around. But in the past, I've used the website iFixit, right? That's a very popular website that talks about, it'll break down whatever devices, and I've used them several times. I remember my old Mac Mini, when I wanted to replace, I think, the hard drive and the RAM, like it had all the instructions on iFixit on how to do that, but that is not a site that's affiliated with Apple. And so the fact that, Apple is kind of going this way, I like you said, I think it's so nice that Apple is at least recognizing this and realizing this and giving people the option. But I think for the vast majority, probably certainly of the folks that listen to us, it's just not going to be worth it. Like go find an Apple store, find somebody that knows what they're doing. And again, frankly, I would just simply stay with an Apple store and let them take care of it, because if something does break, that's my biggest fear. I'd get about, 30% through, Jeff, and then I'd like, oh, what happened to that screw? I don't know. It's lost. It's gone, right? I don't want to be in that position. I just want Apple to take care of it. If you have an extra iPad, this is a great story you'll link to here that you might consider maybe turning it into a HomeKit controller or a HomeKit headquarters. I really like this. It's even got like a little mount on the wall and everything.
Yeah, Bradley Chamber recommends a little $20 mount so that you can put the iPad, just attach it to your wall. And the idea is, much like you would have a light switch on the wall, which people would, flip on and off, turn lights on. You could also have the control panel on your wall so that when people walk into it, they can press buttons on your iPad to activate HomeKit. So instead of flipping a single light switch, they could tap a button on the iPad and they could turn on all the downstairs lights or turn off all the downstairs lights or something like that. It's an interesting idea. I have to admit, for me, what I prefer about HomeKit is that I don't have to go to the wall or to the place to turn things on and off. I like that I can do it with my watch or with my iPhone. Or since I have HomePod minis in my house, I can just talk into the air and, say, I would like you to turn off this light or turn these on, and it does it. In fact, I'll tell you a funny thing, Brett. In my house, I have a little on-off switch that's plugged into an outlet, which is in our living room, which we had plugged our Christmas tree into in December.
Okay.
Right? And so since then, we sort of renovated the room and put some lamps in there. And I just plugged the lamps into the same one. And so my wife and I, every night we walk in and we say, turn on the tree and turn off the tree. And there's no tree. It's just turning the lamps on. And one of these days we'll come up with a better name. But you know what? It sort of sticks. Like when I say to turn the tree on and off, we both know exactly the two lamps are going to come on. So, but if someone walks in our house, they're going to look at us like we're crazy. Why are you calling the two lamps a tree, Jeff? That makes no sense. But anyway, so for me,
it works for you.
Of going to a wall to do it is probably not something that I want to do. But if this appeals to you, if you've got lots of people in your house and they're not set up with their iPhone or whatever, then sure, I can see the advantage of this for sure.
If you have an extra iPhone, here's another story you linked to that perhaps you could repurpose that old iPhone into a webcam. I think this was a story from Jason Snell, where you could just take the old iPhone, which probably is going to have a better camera in it than the webcam that might be built into your laptop. I think Jason points that out. And you can use an app like Camo is the one that he recommends, Camo, that you can turn that iPhone into a webcam for your Mac. Or I think this might even work for the PC as well. I'm not sure. But what a great way to, like, instead of throwing it away, you can always resell it if you wanted to. And there's a lot of services that will take your old iPhones. But if you have a fairly recent one, I think this is a great way to use it. And, especially in the day and age of Zoom today, this would be a great thing to consider.
I've heard people say that an iPhone camera is so much better than a traditional webcam that when you use an app like Camo, you actually get better quality. Have you ever used Camo before, Brett?
I've used it just a little bit. I experimented with it for for exactly this reason, Jeff. I had an older computer, a couple of years ago, right when the pandemic first started, and the camera wasn't as good, and I knew my iPhone was a better camera, and I'm like, surely there's got to be a way that I can use this. I ended up doing something a little bit different, but I downloaded it and tried it out, and there's 2 or 3 other services or apps that are very similar to this, and it worked out pretty well. Obviously, you got to have a way to mount the camera, and you got to decide, do you want the selfie camera or do you want the back camera? Because the back camera on iPhones are usually a little bit better, but then you may not be able to see what you're looking at. It is a little bit different than what we would normally. Exactly, a little awkward, but it works.
One of the things that Jason Snell mentions in his article is, in addition to using the Camo app, like another one of the wonky things that you're referring to is that you have to turn the iPhone on and turn it off and all that sort of stuff. And so he recommends this little tip. You can put an iPhone or an iPad into something called single app mode. If you've ever been to an Apple store, you've probably seen this, because if you for some of their devices, like sometimes they'll have an iPhone for sale that you can try the iPhone, and then behind it they used to have an iPad that would just be information on how to use the iPhone. So you're not actually touching the iPad to buy the iPad, you're just using it for information. And they have it in single app mode, which means you can't exit the screen that shows you the information. You can't jump into a web browser or start doing video calls, something like that.
Right.
So and any of us can do this. You can put your iPhone or iPad into a single app mode. So what Jason recommends is, if you do that and you say, this is my old iPhone, I'm only using it for Camo, I'm putting it in single app mode. So as soon as you turn it on, it immediately jumps into Camo. That's the one and only thing it does. It at least removes one of the obstacles, not that you still don't have others. I've always been intrigued by this because, I usually sell back my old iPhones, or sometimes they get passed down to my son or daughter. But, I know that my iPhone camera is one of the very best cameras in my house, besides my very expensive SLR. So I've always been intrigued to try it. Maybe one day I will. Interesting.
Here's a picture I just found. This is one of the links that Jason Snell had, and you can see that this is not an Apple display. It's I don't know if it's an LG, it looks like, or an Acer display, and somehow they've got the iPhone mounted up, and they're looking at the back camera on the iPhone. So the iPhone truly just becomes a camera, if nothing else. So you can't use the screen, because then it would have to be in selfie mode. There's a few hoops you got to jump through and be comfortable with this. But if you're willing to put in 15-20 minutes of the time to figure out exactly how it's going to work best for you, it can work, and it is a good option if that you don't want to go out and invest in another cam. I'll tell you quickly, Jeff, if you remember right, in the mid 2020 when the pandemic first hit, it was almost impossible to get your hands on an actual webcam. Logitech was selling out of them, and I remember specifically now, that was one of the reasons that I used these apps to try them out. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I've got an iPhone, it's got a great camera, just like you said, Jeff. It's like, maybe I can use this, and that's what I was experimenting with, which was which was kind of cool.
I remember that
so
in early
if you got an old iPhone.
Yeah, one of my partners, my firm has an office in Nashville, and actually in Memphis. Well, we have both, but this one of my partners is in the Memphis office, and like in early 2020, he had ordered this Logitech webcam, and he ordered it from 2 different places because he didn't know what would come in first, and they both came in. So he had an extra webcam, and I bought it from him, and that's the one I'm still talking to you on right now. But like, I just thought it was so funny. That's like, hey, want a webcam? I know a guy who knows a guy. You know, it's like getting them was like, you know. Who looks for somebody open up?
I got a good price for you.
I got your webcams right here. You know, it was crazy. Oh.
We've talked about iPads. We talked about iPhones. How about the Apple Watch now? But this is like an additional little. It's almost like a gadget gizmo. But oh boy, I would love to try one of these out, Jeff.
This is so funny.
You linked to the Wristcam, which, you know, we've always talked about the Apple Watch. You can do phone calls on it today, but just voice phone calls, right? And a lot of us throughout the years when the Apple Watch was coming on, we'd compare it to the old Dick Tracy video watches because, you know, what was that, 50s, 60s? And everybody was just like, oh my goodness, that would never happen. And we're not quite there yet, at least naturally. But you linked to a really interesting product that I would love to try called the Wristcam today, Jeff.
The Wristcam has been out for a while, maybe a year or two. And it allows you to take a picture with, it's a special Apple Watch that can take a photograph. And I have to admit, there have been a few times when I've been out and about. I didn't have my iPhone with me. I only had my Apple Watch, which is fine because I have the cellular model, so I can still.
Right, exactly.
And I've thought, oh, I wish I could take a picture of this. So I have to admit that part of me thinks it would be interesting to take a picture with my watch, even though I know I very, very, very rarely use the feature. So the update that they've done to the operating system now is, in addition to being a still camera, you can also use it as a video camera. So you can have a video call. It looks so. I haven't yet seen any article from anyone who's used this for real. The one thing that you just showed on there was a YouTube video from the manufacturer, and on their promotional video, it looks wonderful. But of course, who knows in the real world
it's all
how
staged.
It works? But but I have to admit, it's pretty cool. Now, holding up your arm while you talk to somebody is a little awkward. So I don't know that you'd want to do it.
Yes.
I mean, heck, I can do video calls on my iPhone and have been able to do so for years. And most of the time when I talk to people, I just call them, or, you know, you have my AirPods in my ear and talk to them that way. So I don't even do video calls on my iPhone that much, let alone doing my Apple Watch. But as you say, Brett, it's the idea that you can do it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
So it looks like that this is actually a band. It's an Apple Watch band. Okay, that you put the Apple Watch in. Okay.
Yeah, so the cameras and stuff are on the band, and there's 2 cameras on it. There's one that faces up and one that faces you, similar to sort of so you use the front-facing camera to see you, and the other person, this is not FaceTime. They have to actually launch the Wristcam app on their device,
I noticed that. It's not FaceTime.
A website. And then, so it's within this, and so who knows what the frame rate is or anything else like that. But again, I would love to find someone who has one of these just to see how it works. Can't imagine that, whatever. Does it say how much does it cost to buy these things?
$299.
$300.
$300. Yes.
And if you want to communicate with somebody else on their watch, you both need to get one. So that's $600. But hey, it's pretty cool that it's out there.
Sounds like you may have a new word game that you're playing, Jeff. We've talked about Wordle quite a bit, right? But now there is another app. I'll try to find the link here while you talk about it here.
It was at the very top first paragraph. Yeah.
Knotwords. Yes, here it is. Knotwords. Very nice.
It's a cute little game. The developers of Knotwords are the same folks that developed an app that I like called Good Sudoku. And again, for folks that are tuning into this podcast because they want to hear about the latest Xbox role-playing game, that's not me. I don't do that. What I enjoy are just simple little word games like crossword puzzles and Sudoku and stuff like that. And this is really interesting because it's sort of like a crossword puzzle because you've got words that, you know, intersect. But instead of giving you definitions and you have to guess the word, you know how many letters there are within a certain area, and you have to place those letters. So in that, it's almost like Wordle, you know, for Wordle that these are the letters I have left to place, and I have to think of words that can work. And then they even have like a twist on it. It's literally called the twist version of the game, where it tells you how many vowels you need to use within a certain line. So basically, what it means is there could be two or more possible solutions, but only one of them will use a certain number of vowels in the first line, a certain number in the second line. So it makes it tough. It's hard. Like it's hard to describe, but once you actually play the first game, then you'll very quickly say, okay, now I see how this thing works. But it ramps up. and it can be a real brain teaser. So again, I've used this for less than 24 hours. It's been out for less than 24 hours, and I've used it for far less than an hour. But it does look to me like it's going to be one of the next games that I'll enjoy playing when I just have some free time. And again, the developers of it, it's Zach Gage and who's the other one? It's I'm blanking out on his name, but they've done many other games
you mentioned it here
that are fabulous. So the interface is clean and beautiful, and it's just Jack Schlesinger. They've done a great job with it. So and you can play it for free, but if you want some more advanced features, you can either subscribe for like $5 a year, or you can just pay $12 once and be done with it. I figured I'm going to pay enough that I just paid $12 a month and I'm done with it. So anyway,
and this is
fun little recommendation.
Knotwords with a K, Knot, as in naughty words.
Yes,
Notty, naughty.
Words are in a knot. The words are
man. It's just, I got to tell you, even while we're traveling, like I would see people on their iPhone and the iPad. It's like Wordle and similar to these word games. This is where to be at these days, Jeff. It just continues to amaze me that this is something that is as popular as it is. But hey, that's great.
And the idea that word games have been around for, throughout centuries, right? But people are still coming out with new twists on it, new ways to sort of take the best of this and the best of that and put it together in a new game. That's awesome.
If you are going to play a game like Knotwords on your iPhone, maybe just don't, maybe have it, just hesitate to take it into a porta potty with you. I was wondering what transition this is almost. This is almost like a public service announcement in and of itself. I had seen this today. Let me pull this up here. From another place where this poor lady in Washington State was apparently hiking up on a mountain somewhere, and she had to use the facilities. And typically, if you've ever been hiking in a wooded area, it's one of these. It's just basically a big hole in the ground, right? Well, unfortunately, this lady who has remained anonymous was dropped her phone down one of those holes. Apparently, attempted to use dog leashes to retrieve it. But when that didn't work, she tied herself or secured herself with the leashes and tried to reach in and retrieve it. Didn't go so well there. She fell in, and then, of course, was basically buried in the water and everything else. Yes, the contents of this. And the story even goes in to say that she tried to get herself out of it, but she could not because she was by herself. But the good news was, she was then able to retrieve her phone, and she called the local firefighters, who were then able to come in and rescue her. And wow, they really give some very detailed information here, Jeff. They apparently they gave her some bricks to stand on until she could get high enough to grab the harness. Wow, what is just I guess a happy ending to the story. But just be careful out there, folks.
I would like the listeners to know that I objected to including this story in today's podcast because it is too early in the morning to be speaking about this literal crap. But there we go.
How about we'll move on. We'll move on here. We'll do some in the know. Here is my tip today, something that I've been using for a while. And I did not know that it was actually available. And there might be a couple of caveats, but let me explain quickly. I have always, when I put like a, let's say a lunch date, I'm going to go have lunch with a colleague, right? And it might be at a restaurant that might take me 20 minutes to get there. So what I'll do is the lunch date is actually at noon, right? But then, Jeff, in the past, what I would do is I would add another appointment to my calendar that would basically block out the 30 minutes before noon so that I would have time. Okay, good. So you know where I'm going with this then. I would have time then to drive there and nobody else could schedule something on my calendar. Well, on your iPhone or your iPad in the calendar app and whatever other apps you use, Fantastical, etc., and on your Mac at least, you can now add the lunch date. And part of the details inside that calendar appointment includes an option to add travel time. It's exactly what they call it. And I prefer this, number one, because it's all one calendar appointment. So it's not two separate appointments on there. And number two, it's tied with that appointment. So if I do have to move that appointment to a different day, then the travel time moves with it. And I also like very much that when I added to the calendar appointment is like a solid color and a line on it. And the travel time actually has a dotted line to the left of it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it looks just a little bit different, just barely different enough so that I can tell that that's the travel time, that it gets blocked out on there. Now, this is a fantastic feature that I use a lot, except that my caveat is it seems to work the best on my calendars that I have connected or landed on my iCloud account, if that makes sense. So I have iCloud calendars, I have Google calendars, I have Exchange calendars. And if I tried to do this and add travel time on an Exchange calendar, I think I can add it on the iPhone, but then that travel time doesn't synchronize to my computer because it doesn't synchronize through the Exchange account. But if I have my iCloud, personal iCloud calendar, I can add the travel time to my iPad appointment or an iPhone or on my Mac, and it will synchronize that travel time on there as well. So I got to tell you, I love this feature in here. There's a few other ways that the iOS will allow you to do this as well. And sometimes you can even say, if you put in a location on your lunch date, then the Apple Calendar will try to say, do you want to add some time before that, based on the location or a travel time, that kind of a thing. But sometimes I don't know where the location is going to be, right? I just might want to put a placeholder on my calendar for lunch with so-and-so, but I don't know what restaurant we're going to go to yet. But I do want to put travel time ahead of that. So this is sort of a quasi-manual way that I can just retain or add some additional time to a calendar appointment called travel time. But I find that it does work the best if it's a calendar that is based in the iCloud server as opposed to an Exchange account or something else along those lines.
So I have a question for you about this, Brett. But before I ask my question, let me just point out that when I saw that you added this to the show notes today, and you know this, Brett, because I told you before we started recording, I was like, how in the world have I missed this my entire life? I've never seen a switch that says travel time. And I realized the reason why is ever since I first started using an iPhone in 2008, I have always had my calendar and my email connected to my firm's Microsoft Exchange environment, right? So that I can get my firm emails and stuff.
Right.
And if your calendar is on Exchange, I guess Exchange itself, or at least the version that we're using, doesn't support this feature.
It doesn't.
Ergo, my iPhone doesn't as well. So I have it on my iPhone. It doesn't even show the switch. Now I noticed that if I use a third-party app like Fantastical, if I edit an event, there is a switch that says travel time. But if I try to turn it on, and I never even noticed it was there in the past, it tells me, I can't do it on this type of account. You need to move the calendar to somewhere else. So, so here's my question: since I've never really used this, is it doing it? Is it computing it based upon distance? So, for example, if I set a calendar when I'm here in New Orleans and I'm going to some place that's 20 minutes away, it'll make it 20 minutes before. But if it turns out that I'm actually an hour away on the day of the appointment, will it extend that dotted line? Oh, okay. So it knows where you are, and it's guessing based on traffic and stuff how far away it is.
Right. Yeah, and you can accept that. Like it shows here in this iMore article that I linked to here, that you can say, select, sharing a location based on location, or what, there was something else on here.
Okay, yeah.
That you don't have to turn that on, but if you do put an actual location on there, it will suggest where, like, you can say, do you want to put some travel time on that kind of a thing, or a reminder based on the fact that you need to leave an hour ahead, before you get there, that kind of a thing. But so I like it that there are some built-in components on that. But for me, I simply I like doing the manual adding a travel time. And almost for me, I think of it as like a buffer, right?
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah.
So it's like, if I got a lunch here, I don't want anybody to put anything else an hour before that lunch, either because I want to finish something up before I go to lunch, whatever the kind of thing is. And so I just go in and I toggle travel time on. And so it blocks out my calendar, and then you can do 5, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, that kind of a thing. So it just has those options on there. So you can either do it manually, like what I like to do, or if you're on an iCloud calendar and you put an actual location in there are some additional options that the calendar will offer to you to say, hey, you might want, do you want me to put an alert for you 30 minutes before this because you're going to have to leave, in order to get to this location based on the map on there. So there's a few different things, but again, most of this is only if you have your calendar based on the iCloud server as opposed to a calendar based on Exchange. Or I think Google Calendar will support some of this, but I think it works a little bit differently. So those are my caveats on there as well.
I wish I could use this feature. It's very cool, and I definitely use it. And I will tell you, the closest I've ever come to using it is every once in a while. I don't often associate a specific location with an event on my calendar because I usually just know where it's going to be. But sometimes I do. And when I do have that, especially if it's like first thing in the morning, I will sometimes get something from Siri that folks have probably seen before that says, it's, based upon current traffic, it's going to take 15 minutes for you to get to work. So you might want to leave now, sort of thing for your first meeting. That's going to be office and still home. So it's a similar technology. And whenever I've seen that, I've always thought it was actually sort of helpful. It's like, oh yeah, thank you, Siri, for telling me that. I didn't, didn't know that. Or if the traffic's really heavy, I might need to leave even earlier. So anyway, that's a cool feature. I thank you for putting it. I had no idea that even existed. I wish I could use it.
Good.
So the tip that I have is an oldie but a goodie. So I hope that most people know about it, but there are times in your life where the internet is just, you don't feel like you have a good internet connection, or maybe you just don't know. You're like you right now, Brett, you're in Philadelphia. You're not sure where you are, how good your internet is. So it's nice to have a way that you can check your internet speed. And the one that I have been using for so long, I may have been using this for a decade.
It's the classic.
I have no idea.
Yes.
It's called Speedtest by Ookla, Ookla. And you can access it on any web browser on any device by just going to speedtest.com. But I actually like to use on my iPhone the app because the app stores history. And so I will often find it useful to sort of look at, last week, last month, what kind of speed was I getting? And, sometimes if I feel like, my cellular's not working, I might run the test when I'm on Wi-Fi and then turn off Wi-Fi and run the test again to see how my cellular is doing. Or sometimes if I'm in another location and I'm like, gosh, am I getting a strong enough signal here to do such and such? I just use the test. And one of the things that they've added, I say recently, it may have actually been years ago, but there's a button at the bottom that's called a video test. And so what it will do is it will actually stream a video and then like from their own servers. And then it will tell you, based upon this, we think you could stream at 720p, or we think you're getting lots of bandwidth. You could stream at 4K. And so it's just something sort of nice to know that if, I'm in a hotel and I plan on streaming a video, I'm just sort of curious, am I going to actually watch this in full quality? And this will actually tell you, yeah, you do have enough bandwidth, or no, you don't. So I use it all the time for different purposes, and it works really well. So whether you're on a computer or something else, use speedtest.net. But again, I recommend that you just get the iPhone app, Speedtest by Ookla. Works great, and it's free.
Yeah, definitely one of the ones that has never gone away from my iPhone or my iPad for exactly the same reasons you're talking about, Jeff. This is the oldie but goodie. This is the standard. There are other speed test apps and services out there, but definitely this is the one that everybody will turn to. And I've even seen it to where, like, if I call my cable company, they'll say, well, have you run a speed test on this? And, they'll try to get me to go to whatever their website it is, but I can tell immediately it's just a wrapper that, around the speed test. And it's speedtest.net. I don't know if .com works. Here, let me see. Did I say
.com? Yeah, it's .net.
You did.
Yeah. Sorry, it is definitely .net.
They may redirect the .com. I don't know, but I've always known because it's always been speedtest.net. Yeah, it looks like it is.
Yeah, don't go to speedtest.com. I apologize if I said that. It's always been speedtest.net. Yeah.
And it's just so great. It's like, it's a big fat go button, right? And you go there and you tap it and it gives you a download speed first, and then it stops and finishes that and gives you an upload speed, which is important, right? You got to know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do this all the time to even just kind of triple check my own Wi-Fi speeds at home, Jeff, just like to make, like, should I call? Like, am I getting what I'm paying for through the cable company? That kind of a thing. I use it all the time. It's such a great app to have, and it's free. It's completely free. You get some ads in it and stuff, but nobody really, all you really want to do is just, okay, am I getting a good speed? What is my speed on that? And once you get it checked, you're good to go.
And just to highlight something that you just mentioned, you want to test both the download and the upload, which it does automatically, because sometimes when I am away from home and away from the office and I'm experiencing some sort of internet trouble, my download speeds are usually fine, but sometimes my upload speed is so ridiculously slow, like less than 1 megabit a second. And I'm like, oh, that's what's really going on here, is that just because of where I am, it's the upload speeds that are really messing me up. And, I use that information to say, okay, so I either need to move, or maybe I need to switch from, 5G to LTE, or find Wi-Fi, or, see if I can adjust something to get around this. But it's a helpful tool to just give a little bit of sense of what's going on.
Absolutely. Thank you for recommending that. That's a great one. In fact, I've been using this Well, I've been here in Philadelphia because I don't think that the Wi-Fi here in the place that we're staying is the greatest, and so I've been using that. Like, hopefully the recording's been going great today. But anyway, just a great one to have. It's a free speed test by Ookla or speedtest.net. Thank you, Jeff. As always, good to talk with you, even when I'm on the road. And I'm looking forward to talking with you again next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.